So I want to talk today. I use the expression the virus-driven police state in America. And I understand that the term police state is, to many people, people might say it's kind of hyperbolic. It's a hyperbole, it's an exaggeration. We're not really a police state. We're just trying to take care. We're just trying to deal with this very alarming virus. But there are many aspects, and I chose the term. I always carefully choose my words. I chose the term police state for a reason, because I want people to become alarmed by how much power the government is gathering to itself because of the virus and their reaction to the virus. To start with, as I mentioned, the first five, the just collectivization of power in Washington in response to the virus is a form of at least growing government control over society. When you have members of Congress already spending money we don't have to bridge over the downtime caused to workers because of government action, and you have them spending money we don't have, it isn't even all spent yet, and the next bill is coming, say the Democrats, and the next bill is coming. There is just it's a mindset that says, we in Washington, we take charge, we centralize power, we control things, we decide how things are going to be handled. And the American people, what your job is to write checks to the IRS and to your state agencies and to do what you're told about the environment, about this crisis of the coronavirus. But I want to tell you, when I use the word police state, I'm just going to run through some stories that are actually happening in America. All these stories, to remind you, Washington, D.C., Fauci and Trump, they have not been the source of mandates in place around the country. Those so far have been put in place, mandates that say shelter in place, all unessential businesses closed, no gathering of people of 10 or more, groups of 10 or more, no leaving your house except if it's an essential purpose. So you can't be outside without permission of the government. All of that is coming from local officials, governors, mayors, county councils, city councils, county commissioners' courts. It's coming from local government, not from Washington. But those local government people are, in fact, responding to the tone being set in Washington, which in turn is being set by the models that many people are beginning to question more and more, the models that predict just astonishing disaster to America, which necessitate just shutting America down. But let me just run through, I tell you, police state, as I say, I don't use that term lightly. In the state of Florida, a woman was out for a run in her small town. Her small town in Florida was called Stuart. It's a quaint Florida coastal town. In the town of Stuart in Florida, she's out for a jog. Got pulled over by 3 police officers, picked up and detained, because she was detained under suspicion of being outside while infected with coronavirus. Well, she doesn't have coronavirus. She had earlier in the week not been feeling well, but they weren't coronavirus symptoms. They were, upset stomach, things that sound more like a stomach flu of some kind. She didn't have coronavirus symptoms. She ultimately did get tested, doesn't have coronavirus. But she was out jogging, not with a group of people, not in the middle of a crowd, outside in her town, pulled over by 3 police officers and detained, ended up having the coronavirus test done. One of the drive-through, you can do drive-through testing. They unfortunately have to use a Q-tip, a lengthy Q-tip to get a swab out of your nose. That's what they test. That's what they did to her, doesn't have the virus. She said that and the police acknowledged that the reason she was pulled over is because some shop owner in her small town saw her out jogging and thought from something he'd read on Facebook, maybe she had coronavirus. She says she can tell you exactly, she doesn't say his name, but she said, I can tell you exactly who it is. It's a restaurant owner who keeps asking me out and is mad because I keep saying no, thank you. So you have the police who could have responded to the shop owner by saying, she's allowed to be out jogging here. She's not with anybody. She's not in within 6 feet of anybody. And we don't just go hunting people down based on the suspicion of other people that maybe they have the virus. So her story, she ends up obviously not being charged. She says 4 to 5 police officers surrounded her in historic downtown Stewart. This is this past Thursday after business owners spotted her in the street and called 911. So that is one example of absurd police state. Police can't say to this restaurant owner, hey, buddy, you know what? We don't have to pull somebody over just because you think she might have coronavirus. I'm going to give you another story out of the state of Maine. And this is a good story in which the point is that people are speaking up. People are resisting this kind of mandated shelter in place. Don't you dare leave your home without permission of the government. The governor of the state of Maine, Governor Mills, had issued an order, essentially stay at home, and urging the sheriff's departments to pull people over to ask them why they're out. If you're only supposed to leave your home for essential reasons, and so in Texas, I can tell you essential means grocery store, doctor's appointment, or to pick up a medication. So in Maine, you're not supposed to be out. So this Maine's governor put out an instruction to the sheriff's department saying, you know what, pull people over. Even if they've done nothing wrong, just pull them over to ask them, why are you out? And then you, sheriff's department, you get to decide whether what they tell you fits in our description of essential. So a written statement issued by one of the sheriffs in Maine, Sheriff Nichols, Scott Nichols, one of the 16 county sheriffs in the state of Maine, said, we will not be setting up a police state. We will not be setting up a police state, period. He said he will not purposefully go out and stop vehicles just because they're on the road and stop and ask people who are out and about. He says to do so, number one, puts officers at risk. And number two, it's too much like Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, that the authorities have the right to stop you just to say, why are you out? Where are you going? What are you doing? I mean, it gets to, well, where are your papers? Who do you think you are? I love this spirit from this sheriff. And I mentioned something in the show a couple of days ago. I want to mention again about constitutional rights. No constitutional rights are absolute. I mean, none. They all have, you can't fire in a crowded theater. You can't, all the things everybody knows. But you do have in this country, from the Declaration of Independence, the whole concept that we have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have the right to live our lives, live them, not just, stay in place when you're told. Now, again, a short-term emergency, tornado is coming, shelter in place, get in someplace safe in your home. Hurricane is coming, stay off the roads. We have flooding in the roads. But a long-term, indeterminate, and when I say indeterminate, no determined end in sight for many of these orders infringes on the right of people to live out their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're being told you can never leave your home again, if there is some order in place related to a future possible contraction or the spreading of some virus, whether it's coronavirus or something else, you are surrendering your life and liberty and your pursuit of happiness. You're being forced to surrender your liberty. And think also about this fact. The coronavirus orders, the coronavirus problem in America, which is leading to COVID-19, and we do have people suffering. This entire thing is not a hoax. The government reaction is extreme and is being used to repress freedom. So it's not a hoax. The coronavirus is real. COVID-19 is real, suffering is real, shortages in some particular places in this country are real, but the damage to our liberty is also a real concern. And a lot of the rules in place in this country, including where I live, Dallas County, a lot of the rules in place right now are not based on actual danger of the coronavirus. They're based on models predicting future danger of a virus, models predicting future potential danger, future possible shortages. It was the justification in Dallas County. The reason that they said they can issue shelter in place and all businesses closed was the idea that if you look at some models, the projections said they wouldn't have sufficient ICU beds. They wouldn't have sufficient hospital rooms. We might run out of supplies. And so because of models, which in the case of Dallas County and many other places around this country have turned out to be drastically exaggerated, models drastically exaggerated, said much more damage and danger was coming than actually was. Yet we're being told these orders to shelter in place are justified by models. And so you surrender your liberty and you wait for the government to tell you when you can leave your home again. Compound that with Dr. Fauci has already told America, A, he expects that the virus will be back in the fall. It may mutate. It may become a seasonal virus. So year after year after year, we'll deal with coronavirus flu season like we deal with swine flu season and other flus season. And so we have to ask ourselves, in this initial phase, we all went along early on, or pretty much everyone went along early on with the idea of you have to honor what the government's asking us to do to spread what we thought was going to be the rapid, fearful spread of coronavirus. But if the standard of liberty we're now being asked to accept is whenever the government says a virus looks like it might be coming here, or models tell us that a virus we have in our midst or headed our way might turn out to involve very high numbers of people getting sick, we can take away your liberty and you can't do a thing about it. We can shut down your business, shut down your income, shut down your home, shut down everything. You will stay in place until you're told. So this is the kind of thing, back to our story about this happy sheriff in Maine saying, no, we're not going to go along with stopping people who are just out in their car, otherwise committing no offense. They didn't run a stop sign. They're not driving drunk. They didn't speed. We're not going to stop them just to say, where are you going? Do you have a sufficient reason to be out of your home? A legitimate reason. And he actually said, he talked about the idea that they'll try to educate people first, and they want people to understand what the rules are. But he said, he's not willing to set up a police state in his county in the state of Maine. So that was one example, and a sheriff. And by the way, sheriffs, we talked about this years ago in the show, but sheriffs have kind of a unique place. I can't get off on it today. A unique place in our constitutional structure of this country. This guy is saying, yeah, I'm actually going to enforce that. Next little case. We're on the cases of my point that we're becoming a police state, and we better be alert to it and stand up to it. A paddleboarder. Now, if you ever paddleboarded, I have, and paddleboarding is just you're standing up in this paddle out in a bay or the ocean or wherever you are, and you're standing up and you're paddling along. You're going like 0 miles an hour. You're barely moving, and there's no one around you, and you're far from the shore. There's no one around you. A single paddleboarder was arrested, chased by a boat, and arrested in Malibu for being out during the coronavirus closures. So this guy was on his paddleboard in Malibu, which sounds lovely, by the way. I'm sure it was a lovely day, and he was enjoying being out. A lifeguard ordered him to get out of the ocean. He was near the Malibu pier. He did not do that. He kept paddleboarding around. They actually had county lifeguards patrolling the shore by boat, trying to get the man to come ashore. Despite repeated orders to exit the water, he continued paddleboarding for 30 minutes. Lifeguards eventually flagged down Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies who responded by boat to help. So according to the Sheriff's Department, you can see a video of this incident, bystanders standing there watching, and eventually bystanders videoing it and putting it up on social media. But he was arrested on suspicion of disobeying a lifeguard and violating Governor Gavin Newsom's stay-at-home order. I mean, seriously, the Los Angeles Police Department couldn't think of anything else to do with their time than track down a single paddleboarder who's out there by himself. Now, I want to run through a bunch of other examples, even more flaming absurd. And then I'll make two more points about this, but after the other examples. And I do want to have you keep in mind that these are just early on. These are examples early on in America's experience with a very, very draconian orders in place around our country, that we have people who are just experiencing what they really haven't in America before, which is this kind of, America with a police force in place, believing it's their job to stop you wherever you are and ask you what you're doing. But here's some other examples of things that were shut down because of the where we are in this country in terms of the coronavirus. So this past Saturday in Kansas City, police in Kansas City intervened to shut down a parade of elementary school teachers. Elementary school teachers. The staff of some elementary school decided to organize a parade as a way to boost the morale of their students and encourage them in this new distance learning adventure. All of the teachers involved in the parade, all of the teachers and administrators were in their own cars. So you're in your own car, you're necessarily 6 feet from the next car. I mean, you can't, you're not going to be that close to someone if you're out in your car. So the teachers in their cars, no chance whatsoever of, transmission in that distance. But a spokeswoman for the police later explained that they had to break up, tell the teachers they could not do this parade to inspire their young students to learn about this social distancing thing and deal with their new normal, which we're never going to accept. It descended upon because the celebration of learning was not necessary or essential. There you go. Not necessary or essential. Police in Malibu, we just talked about that one, caught a paddle boarder in the ocean, requiring 2 boats, 3 additional deputies and vehicles called to the scene for a, guy paddle boarding. You had not far away San Diego Sheriff's Department giving out citations to people who committed the crime of wanting to watch the sunset on the beach. I can tell you, my husband and I, with our 3 kids, we lived in San Diego many years. It is one of the best places in the world to go and watch the sun over the ocean. I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful to watch sunsets in California. So if you're 6 or 10 feet apart in the ocean, along the beach, that was not okay. These people got citations against them for watching the sunset outside. And I'm reading these, by the way, from a brilliant piece that was on Daily Wire. You can read it on my website, americacanwetalk.org. If you go to that website, our website, you can go on that homepage under shows, drop down list of links, and you can read this litany of examples. I'm not going to read all of them, but just to tell you, when I'm saying police state, I'm not kidding. These are crazy unless you think they were happening in like Cuba or Venezuela or some other repressive regime, but they're happening right here in America. Okay, in Pennsylvania, police were pulling over and ticketing a woman who, according to the citation, what she did wrong was she was going for a drive. She was out. And I guess they have a, shelter in place and only essential errands are permitted. So she was just going for a ride. But she got a citation for that. In Minnesota, 2 people ticketed for 2 offenses. One was just driving with a canceled license. Okay, you really can't do that. The other one was violating her state's stay-at-home order. So they have a stay-at-home order in Minnesota, which, by the way, Minnesota has a minuscule problem with coronavirus. What she told the police is she'd gone to Taco Bell, so that's probably permitted. You can go out and get food. But on the way home, before that, she'd visited her storage unit. And so I guess storage unit was non-essential. You can't go, whatever you're doing, visiting or putting things in your storage unit. All sorts of things. We have places now where even though Walmart can be open, as an example, Walmart or stores like that can be open because they sell essential supplies like food and medications. But now those stores are being told to only sell necessary essential items. So if you go to Walmart and you're in line and you have your bread, milk, eggs, but you picked up, I don't know, insect repellent, Band-Aids, who knows what things are not essential. Walmart's being told you can't buy those items because they're not essential. So even though the store's open and you're there anyway, you can't buy these particular items because they don't qualify as essential. A driver from New York gets caught in Florida might face 60 days in jail. And this is for some, I don't know what he was doing. Let me tell you this. This is amazing. They have been setting up checkpoints to stop and question every car that passes through. Checkpoints, stopping every car that passes through to ask you essentially, where are you from and why are you out? And are you in violation of some order in the state in which you live? Okay. That you have, there's a whole bunch of police chief in Colorado actually said in an interview in response to questions about why are you picking on people who aren't doing anything wrong, or they're out of the house, but they're not within 6 feet of other people. They're not doing anything wrong. A police chief in Colorado explained that the act of leaving your house and going outside is not a right. It's actually a privilege that can be provoked it can be revoked if it is misused. So the right to go outside your house can be revoked. Seriously. Okay. Prosecutor in Ohio, being interviewed in a radio interview, said that those who defy his state stay-at-home order are committing felonious assault. Felonious meaning as in a felony assault. If you're guilty of that, you can sit your butt in jail, sit there and kill yourself. Okay, that's very nice. A really nice prosecutor in Ohio. I want to say, I keep going back to be fair to elected officials early on. People thought we had a very dangerous situation, and you know, we had coronavirus is going to kill us all in the next, you know, X number of days or weeks unless we did this shelter in place. But we're now into it for a while. We've been in our homes with orders in place to stay in our homes, prohibitions of businesses functioning, prohibition of any business deemed by the government non-essential, which, as a good friend of mine pointed out, everybody's business is essential to that owner. Everybody's job is essential to the person who has that job. But the government's picking and choosing who can be open and closed, not usually what we're okay with in this country. But a whole other way that we have this police state developing, beside the examples I gave you, I want to hit kind of two other points on this theme to really drive home that the response by the government to the coronavirus threat that we, the people, are permitting to develop is will become part of our history. It is shaping our future as we decide how much we'll tolerate or whether we push back as individuals and say, not okay with me, not doing that, we're going to stand up. So the two other aspects of it is that it's not just the individual examples, individual things like whether sheriffs are going to pull over people who didn't do anything wrong. It is the mindset developing in many, many people who are local officials in jurisdictions all around this country. And I'll give you an example of one. I was actually texting with a friend who's a elected official at a local level out of state, and, you know, just kind of saying, wow, things are getting pretty crazy here. And one thing he was saying in response back was, well, you know, I'm thinking in a few more weeks, we can let a few more people go back to work. Now, this is, to be clear, in the context of a long text exchange, on and on and on and on and on. But that mindset that a local official is already embracing the idea that the local officials, will let people go back to work, that let people out of their homes without being punished or arrested or questioned or sent back home. This is the mindset that is setting in at local official levels all over this country. The idea that we'll decide and you people have no say. You citizens, you don't decide your freedom, we decide your freedom. We're going to have this coronavirus with us in this country. I'm sorry to report. I mean, I would love if somehow someone found a way to eviscerate all viruses and get them off planet Earth. Great, we have that, we're all set. But the coronavirus is enabling the kind of people who've always wanted to control other people. Is giving these kind of inner Nazi, inner tyrant type leaders legitimacy in what they're doing. Legitimacy in saying, no, we'll decide because we're the ones who really understand, we're the smart ones. And then the other thing that's happening as a correlated unfortunate thing is how much of this attitude about coronavirus and protecting ourselves, it's not just that local officials are feeling extremely emboldened and feeling empowered to control other people. I'm going to get to a moment about what happened at a meeting today here in Dallas, Dallas is called the County Commissioners Court. It's the highest authority in Dallas County. And they had a hearing today at which people were trying to push back a little bit and say, hey, you know what? We actually, we don't like that we're being held in place, and we don't like this April 30th seems too long. We had people, business owners saying, you know what, this is killing me. I can't pay my employees. I can't keep my business open. I'm not gonna be able to pay my rent. I mean, people saying this is really hurting us. I'm going to talk to you in a moment about some of the things that were said there. But the last thing I want to say, just kind of an overarching concern, is how much it's changing the American culture, how people think about each other, how they speak with each other. We had Dr. Everett Piper on the show a couple days ago, and he was talking about that person-to-person cultural change. But I'll just give you some examples. I mentioned a week or two ago in the show about a friend of mine in the neighborhood around here in this Dallas area whose next door neighbor was out in her own front yard with her own children, own front yard, own children. My friend's neighbor, the lady across the street, called the police to say those kids are outside and they're not keeping it 3 feet apart. At that point, it was just 3 feet. They're not keeping 3 feet apart. And the police had to come and say, actually, lady, it's her yard, it's her kids, she's allowed to do that. But this tattling on each other, this reporting on each other, this is a very creepy aspect of the police state. It is among the things that many gruesome tyrants counted on throughout history, instilling fear in the people and encouraging people to turn in their neighbors. I remember, it's a funny thing, an odd little example of it. I remember years ago when we lived in San Diego, and they had a water shortage. We had a drought going on, so they had rules about which side of the street could water on whatever it was, on even days, if you're or even days of the week, people with even house number could water, whatever the rule. There's some rule about it. And then, so they're trying to stagger watering, and they're trying to encourage people not to waste water. So they had actually in the city's announcement about this, you could report your neighbor. You could call in and say, hey, Susie next door, she's watering, but it's not our day, but she's watering. Now, this kind of thing, it seems so petty. Think, who would even do that? But people did. And my father-in-law, who was just it was a blessing of a father-in-law, fabulous father-in-law, and and they lived near us, and they are often over at our house visiting with our kids. And he and my mother-in-law were very close. My kids' grandparents very close with us during the years in San Diego. My father-in-law, just a tremendous student of history and of government, had said, this is really, really bad. This government urging people to turn in their neighbors over excessive watering is really, really bad. Now, my only reaction to it had been kind of like, who would waste their time to turn in their neighbor? I'm not going to do that. No one would. But he's saying, but it's encouraging people to think of their neighbors as their enemies and to think of themselves as a little bit invested with police power. I'm going to get, Susie, a neighbor, or somebody else. I'm going to, I'm going to get her turned in. And it just changes the culture of the country to have people encouraged to turn each other in. So here in Dallas County, we have our own county judge actually tweeting out, encouraging people to turn in their neighbors, their fellow business owners, people who are doing things not allowed by the orders in place in Dallas, encouraging people to report to City Hall, say, hey, did you know so-and-so is doing this? This is actually happening. And if it's happening here in Dallas County, I'm going to guess it's around the country. The idea that people encouraged to turn in your neighbor because that makes you a good citizen. And this is how and it's done with a very sanctimonious, self-righteous, you're the good guy here. You're standing up for protecting us from coronavirus. You're helping the people of this country, and you're saving us from the danger of your rotten neighbor who's doing this. It's a very insidious and ugly step away from a free society. People starting to fear their neighbors turning them in, and the government encouraging people to turn their neighbors in. And people have plenty of busybodiness. I mean, all around, I'm sure all around the country. In fact, you can see it in social media, see it in Facebook, other postings. People endlessly, like their inner Nazi is coming to life, their inner tyrant, their inner schoolmarm scold personality coming to light. People posting, I am so proud of myself, my family, because we are sheltering in place, and we only went to the store once this entire week, and everything else we're going to do without. And if we did it, you can too. And I can't believe I saw so and so out and about, and she was, she did this, she was at this place, she shouldn't have been there. I mean, people are this kind of rottenness in people's attitudes, judging each other, interfering with each other. These are rotten things flowing from this growing sense of overregulation and overreaction to the coronavirus pandemic. It is actually harming the culture of our country. I have periodically thought about weighing in on some of those things, and the battles aren't usually worth it on social media, because people are set in their ways, but it really is helping people get a real window on what their friends are really all about. The school marms scold. You see who's doing that. Just the inner tyrant, inner Nazi mentality of people is coming to light. Last thing I want to mention about the Dallas Dallas County Commissioners Court, rather, they had a hearing today where people could, I had a hearing today where they could come forward and you could talk to them, weigh in your 2 cents, what you'd like to have happen. So you had a friend of mine was there, and she was telling the kind of comments that were made. And what really emerged was citizens are telling their own representative on the county commissioner's court, we can't go. I mean, the talk of 30, 60, 90 more days of shelter in place, of we can't go anywhere, of we can't have our businesses. We can't survive. We can't do that. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the means to do it. We can't keep our business open. We can't pay for our rent. We can't do this. You've got to lift this. And you just can sense from some of the things that were said, the kind of, yeah, but we, the ruling elite, we know better. There was even an effort to try to get, because right now it's happening, the highest official in Dallas County named Clay Jenkins, he's the one calling all the shots, issuing all the edicts, issuing all the rulings. Even other people on the commissioner's court were saying, don't you think maybe we should all be part of this? Like, we should all have a meeting and all participate in discussing what's going to happen? But the pushback was, no, we don't have the time. Sometimes you have to have emergencies. We can't have a 2 or 3 hour meeting every time we have to change things. I'm telling you, people, this police state mentality is going to the heads of people who've always liked to be the little tyrant, the little in charge of everybody else. Very, very, very dangerous. And even discussion within the county commissioner's court about things like, look, if we have only 10, if the 6 feet distance is safe, if you say I'm staying 6 feet or less away from everyone, and a church is huge, and so why do we have to have the 10-person limit in the church? Because you could have more people than 10, and you could have everyone staying 6 feet apart. Why can't they do that? I mean, there were a lot of questions being discussed, but what ultimately emerged, and I don't know that there were any rulings out of today's hearing in front of the commissioner's court. I think it was more a chance to air grievances and concerns, but there was very much emerging from some people, no, actually, we need to be in charge, and we'll decide, and we'll let you know. Until then, you pretty much need to sit tight and do what we say. A dangerous trend and tendency in America.